Katie Adams. We just want to tell you a little bit about where your money goes, the tickets that you purchase. The first program is KidsRead, which helps teachers around New York City incorporate fiction into their curricula in sort of new and different ways. It brings hundreds of middle and high school students to the Center for Fiction to meet real authors and take writing workshops, and hopefully inspire a lifelong love of reading and literature.
All the proceeds of the first novel, Fête, and any money that you put into these little crayons lying around in the room, and we tried it. You can fit $1.
You can definitely
fit $1 in there. Coins are welcome. Checks are welcome. Whatever you want to put in there is great. So the KidsRead program is 30,000 age-appropriate books every year to 70 local public schools. So it's a great program. We really encourage you to support it. We want to also thank the committee and Doe Bakery for the donuts, Magnolia for the cupcakes, and Schmackeries for the cookies. We also have a couple of photo booths around in the room, so feel free to. There's some selfie sticks if you know how to use them. Many of the people on the committee are young. Nobody really knew how to use the selfie stick, so you could teach us. Katie did figure it out. So without further ado, we'll get started with the readings. They'll be in alphabetical order by author, because that's how we organize things in this business. We'll start with Angela Flournoy.
The haunting, according to the older children, occurred during the very same summer that the big room became a bedroom. Lonnie, the youngest child then, was the first to witness the Haints' attack. He'd just begun visiting the bathroom alone and was headed there when he had the opportunity to save his brother's life. 3-year-olds were of a tenuous reliability, but to this day, Lonnie recalls the form of a pale-hued young man lifting Cha-Cha by his pajama collar out of the bed and toward the narrow window. Back then, the majority of the homeowners in that part of Detroit's east side were still white, and the street had no empty lots. Cha-Cha sneaking out with the white boy, Lonnie sang. He stamped his little feet on the floorboards. Soon Quincy and Russell spilled into the hallway. They saw Cha-Cha, all elbows and fists, swinging at the Haint. It had let go of Cha-Cha's collar and was now in the defensive. Quincy would later insist that the Haint emitted a blue, electric-looking light, and each time Cha-Cha's fists connected with its body, the entire thing flickered like a faulty lamp. 7-year-old Russell fainted. Little Lonnie stood transfixed, a pool of urine at his feet, his eyes open wide. Quincy banged on his parents' locked bedroom door. Viola and Frances Turner were not in the habit of waking up to tend to ordinary child nightmares or bedwetting kerfluffles. Francie, the eldest girl at 12, burst into the crowded hallway just as Cha-Cha was giving the Haint his worst. She would later say the Haint's skin had a jellyfish-like translucency, and the pupils of his eyes were huge, dark discs. "Let him go and run, Cha-Cha," she said. "He ain't running me out of here," Cha-Cha yelled back. With the exception of Lonnie, who had been crying, the 4 Turner children in the hallway fell silent. They heard plenty of tales of mischievous Haints from their cousins down south. They pushed people into wells, made hangmen dance in midair. So it did not follow that a spirit from the other side would have to spend several minutes fighting off a territorial 14-year-old. Francie possessed an aptitude for level-headedness in the face of crisis. She decided she'd seen enough of this paranormal beatdown. She marched into Cha-Cha's room, grabbed her brother by his stretched-out collar, and dragged him into the hall. She slammed the big room door behind them and pulled Cha-Cha to the floor. They landed in Lonnie's piss. "The Haint tried to run me out of the room," Cha-Cha said. He wore the indignant look, eyebrows raised, lips parted, of someone who has suffered an unbearable affront. "There ain't no Haints in Detroit," Frances Turner said. His children jerked at the sound of his voice. That was how he existed in their lives, suddenly there on his own time, his quiet authority augmenting the air in the room. He stepped over their skinny brown legs and opened the big room's door. Frances Turner called Cha-Cha into the room. The window was open, and the beige sheets from Cha-Cha's bed hung over the sill. "Look under the bed." Cha-Cha looked. Behind the dresser, nothing there. "Put them sheets back where they belong." Cha-Cha obliged. He felt his father's eyes on him as he worked. When he finished, he sat down on the bed, unprompted, and rubbed his neck. Frances Turner sat next to him. "Ain't no Haints in Detroit, son." He did not look at Cha-Cha. "It tried to run me out of the room. I don't know what all happened, but it wasn't that." Cha-Cha opened his mouth, then closed it. "If you ain't grown enough to sleep in here by yourself, I suggest you move on back across the hall." Frances Turner stood up to go, faced his son. He reached for Cha-Cha's collar, pulled it open, and put his index finger to the line of irritated skin below the Adam's apple. For a moment, Cha-Cha saw the specter of true panic in his father's eyes. Then Francis's face settled into an ambivalent frown. "That'll be gone in a day or two," he said. In the hallway, the other children stood lined up against the wall. Marlene, child number 5, and a bit sickly, had finally come out of the girls' room. Francie and Quincy cleaned up Lonnie's mess. "And all y'all best go to sleep. I don't want to hear nobody talking about they tired come tomorrow." Francis Turner closed his bedroom door. Like hand-me-down clothes, the legacy of the Haint faded as the years went by. For a few years, the Haint's appearance and Cha-Cha's triumph over it remained an indisputable, evergreen truth. It didn't matter that no subsequent resident of the big room had a night to rival Cha-Cha's. None of them ever admitted to hearing so much as a tap on the window during their times there. The original event was so remarkable that it did not require repetition. Cha-Cha took on an elevated status among the first 6 children. He had landed a punch on a Haint and was somehow still breathing. But with each additional child who came along, the story lost some of its luster. By the time it reached Layla, the 13th and final Turner child, Francis Turner's 5-word rebuttal, "Ain't no Haints in Detroit," was more famous within the family than the story behind it. It first gained a place in the Turner lexicon as a way to refute a claim, especially one that very well might be true, a sign of the speaker's refusal to discuss the matter further. The first 6, confident that Francis Turner secretly believed in the Haint's existence, popularized this usage. By Layla's youth, the phrase had mutated into an accusation of leg pulling. "Daddy said if I get an A in Mrs. Paulson's class, he let me come on his trucking trip to Oregon." "Oregon? Come on, man. Ain't no Haints in Detroit."
All of the ceilings at 111 Cambridge Place had the same beautiful white floral molding. However, in the master bedroom, a door handle was embedded in one of the leaves in the pattern. Once you opened it, the door revealed a fold-up ladder, which led upstairs to the 3rd floor to Anwar's studio. To reach the door handle, Anwar stood on a chair and pulled down the ladder. He hoisted himself into the room and sat for a moment to steady his trembling knees. Heaven. He inhaled the wisps of baked blueberry in the air. A refrigerator preserved fresh fruit extracts, yogurt, soy, and oatmeal scrubs for his apothecary goods, which he concocted in this kitchen. Wicker furniture scored from weekend stoop sales. Leather-bound journals and old magazines created a skyline of paper towers on the floor. Hashi, his wife, never came upstairs, preferring the make Anwar do it system. She would holler, "I need a cleanser!" And then Anwar would send the products down in a bucket attached to a rope. He unbuttoned his daytime shirt and pants and changed into his night gear, a plaid lungi and a plaid shirt. It's time for a toque, Anwar thought. On the floor was a border of 19 empty pint-sized mason jars, courtesy of none other than Rashad Prasad, who grew a potent crop out in an abandoned house in the Rockaways. Anwar had never visited him there. He squatted down and unscrewed the lid. The pungent leafy aroma floated into his nostrils. He plucked a dark green bud laced with purple hues, packed a nugget in a wooden pipe, and lit it with a match. One luxurious drag, and the evening's fight with his wife subsided. "Ah," he heard as he inhaled. "Did I make this sound?" Anwar thought. He inhaled and exhaled again out the tiny arch window. What was this sound? He kept the space firm and free. He heard drumming, and then another long, melodious sigh. "Ah, Hashi?" he asked. No answer. Hashi had not come upstairs. The drumming sound beckoned him to investigate the wall that he shared with his tenant, Ramona Espinal. It was a thin wall, and a locked door separated them. Only Anwar had the key. He rolled towards the wall, his elbow hitting it with a thud. Drumming ceased. He took another toke. Laughter. He chuckled along. Was Ramona Espinal with a lover? He pictured a sweaty, stubbly mariachi riding the spur of his boots down her tight, voluptuous hips. I must have seen this on TV, he thought. Ramona was a Mexican nurse midwife at Brooklyn Hospital and nearly half his age. He checked his watch. It was 1:45. She shouldn't be home at this hour. The drumming commenced. A man laughed. It's the headboard, Anwar realized. "Anwar!" he heard Hashi shout from below. Yes, darling." As soon as he said it, he clasped his hands over his mouth. The drumming stopped. "It's bedtime now," called Hashi. "And the shampoo. Don't forget the shampoo." "Yes, darling." He rolled away from the wall and opened his eyes. Ah, my old friend. His comrade Rezwan's severed head floated around Anwar. He blinked several times, and Rezwan's head did the same. Ghastly bits of spinal cord and purple-black windpipe trailed from Rezwan's neck. A machete scar sliced open cheek into mouth, a yellow half-moon smile that said, "How many times can you answer for my death? You abandoned me." As if hearing Anwar's thoughts, Rezwan nodded yes. Anwar nodded back. He had loved Rezwan, his brother-in-law and comrade, more than any man before or since. Years after the war, in 1985, Rezwan and his wife Laila were both shot to death by an unknown gunman. They had planned to settle near Laila's hillside family home in Rangamati, a village away from the decaying city that Dhaka had become. They were killed a mere days before the move. Rezwan's anti-government views about President Arshad were well documented in Dhaka, but Anwar did not believe the gunman was an unknown assassin or government operative. He suspected that this was an act of revenge. Yet Anwar was too far away to investigate. There were weightier matters involved. Rezwan's daughter Ella had been spared, having slept over at her grandparents' flat that evening, and upon hearing the news, Anwar begged to bring Ella to New York to live as his daughter. It took 2 years for Rezwan's parents to agree to let them take her. Today would have been Rezwan's 30th wedding anniversary, Anwar remembered, married on a pristine beach in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, barefoot upon the striated black and white sands. Except for Anwar, Hashi, and their immediate family, all of the guests were villagers whom Rezwan and Laila had met while installing tube wells in the surrounding villages. That day, one of Anwar's happiest, rice wine, song, and dance aplenty, was etched in his mind forever. He realized that besides the bride and groom, many of those in attendance would suffer for years afterward, poisoned by arsenic-laced well water. "We die, memory is fragmentary, and I believe in nothing," said Anwar to his friend. "But there are times when scripture relieves a sense of flailing." And they moved their lips in recitation, Arabic into Bangla, into Arabic again, scraps from the Surah Al-Nur, the light. "See how Allah created the 7 heavens and earth, made the earth a niche, made the moon a lamp, made the sun a glass, a brilliant star, lit from a blessed tree, neither east nor west, its oil luminous though no fire touched it, light upon light, speak to us in parables, knower of all." "I got to be with your sister now," thought Anwar. Rezwan stuck out his tongue and disappeared into the air vent. Anwar wanted to hold the closest thing to his dead friend, his daughter Ella, but she had not yet come home. Thanks.
I'm going to read a short middle section, and all you need to know is my main character is, she's in her 70s, she's a difficult and ornery person. She's very ill. She's looking out a window, and she's remembering a quickie divorce she got in Mexico in the 60s. At the first light of dawn, the landscaper reappears. She's become accustomed to watching him. Today, he pushes a wheelbarrow across the wet grass. He parks by the hedge, for the first time close enough for her to notice the lettering on his t-shirt. It reads, "DeRosa's Landscape and Tree Removal," and features a drawing of a riding mower. He sets a mug carefully down in the uneven grass. From its cheerful color, she suspects he has a family. He sits against the hedge, opens a newspaper. He pulls a loose cigarette from his pocket, lights it, contemplates the evenness of the topiary, returns to his reading. The smell of the smoke mingles with the smell of dewy grass and the dawn mist rising off the lake. It steals into her room, not a cigarette, but a joint. Its stale pungency, first husband, Raymond Fitz, who made his job at MGM seem far more than it was and charmed her out of sense. She had no parents alive to tell her charm was not enough. She can still feel their ancient life, though they were married only 3 years. Raymond, sitting on the floor beside her chair, everything an electric confession, the ice cubes melting in the heat. A party in a railroad apartment in the West Village, her hand on a battered cello case lugged from so far uptown. The year they tried it his way, a rented bungalow in California, and Cece wore an apron. Raymond leaping up and padding off to find a record. Raymond pushing her against the hot stove for dancing with Art Blakey. Maybe it was only they were young. They divorced discreetly. She was 21. She flew to Mexico on the Juarez special. He agreed to be out by her return. A 3-day package, a round-trip flight from New York, an appearance alone in Juarez family court on the day between planes. She stood and said her name before the judge. She kept her hat on. It was new and expensive and American and made her feel protected, with netting hanging down over the eyes between her and the judge. She handed him her passport and the divorce papers the New York lawyer had drawn up. The judge stamped them and warned her not to drink the hepatitis water. She slept a fitful night at the Fleabag No-Tell that was part of the deal. Boarding the small plane back, the passengers nodded hello, recognizing each other from the flight over and the lobby of the courthouse where they'd stood in wait, each holding a ticket with a number. 20 and 30-something women, white, wealthy enough to divorce on the quiet so far from home. The plane got through the clouds and turned towards New York. The divorcees leaned their sleek heads together to commiserate and asked the stewardesses for stingers and Mai Tais, pregnant or not, drinkers or not, secrets safe with the Mexicans. They kept it together until somewhere over Texas, one began to cry and the rest began to smoke. They pulled tissues and photos of children out of their purses and stood to smooth their skirts. They bumped their heads against the coat shelves, clutching the crumpled tissues, holding their heads as they pitched up the aisle to the ladies' room and back. They ordered whiskey and fanned themselves with their gloves and the emergency discharge cards, and half were laughing and half were crying, but they were all gat-gun drunk loud. Locksmith, vacuum, dog, baby, loan, alone, telephone, darling, carpet, wash up, cheer up. And by the time the farm fields of Ohio were under the wings, a special kind of exhaustion, a special melancholy had set in, and together the women drew the blinds of the slight white plane to listen to the stuttering whir of the prop, having decided in unspoken communion that they would not look at the line of the earth meeting the sky or the jagged silver welcome of Midtown in the distance. They asked for coffee please on descent, because their mothers were picking them up, because no one was picking them up, because they were clown-faced with relief and grief, and Cece decided, alone and sober in row 1, having talked to no thank you, no one, that she was not interested in landing, and hallelujah if the maiden 707 kept gliding north right into the granite of the Appalachians, because what life after this could be called life? But then she met Walter. Patricia was born in George. She discovered her good work, the work of converting her inheritance to the good. The man out the window stubs his joint. He hasn't seen her. Her divorce from Walter, though, she hadn't been able to keep private. It was her last public embarrassment. It was her first public embarrassment and her last. She aims to keep it that way. She won't allow her illness, the spider, to have witness. Spider, what the shaking has done to her handwriting, and also how the black spots between the white branches of her dying nerves look on the scan. After that divorce, she'd restored her and the children's surname to Sumner. Walter's consent cost her a pretty penny, but why go on as Minch's? She'd applied Nan's rule for clutter. An item must be beautiful or useful to retain its place. Minch, a name without beauty, a name without use. The man out the window deserves as much privacy as she. She will not report his misconduct. She looks into his face, thinking, look at me, I am here. He balances the dead joint on the lid of his mug and picks up the metal wings of his shears. Left unnoticed, to notice herself alone, she finds she's cold and hungry. What an insult it is to wait like an addict for a handful of pills, to await the return of one's son. Thank you so much.